Hey guys, it's the Red Shadow once again, and I'm back with another video. This time, I wanted to sit down and give my thoughts on something I haven't really talked about for a while, especially not in its own video. But I spent the last almost full year rewatching The X-Files. I kind of go slow. I speed up and watch stuff, and then slow down and don't watch things for a while. Happened right after I got into Season 8. A little bit of a reflection on the change in the series, but a little bit more of just me personally at that moment, just kind of detaching from watching things and playing things that I was into. Took me some time to get my steam back, and I rolled back into that. I would say maybe like this is the very end of September, so we're probably talking like in August. I got back into it, started hitting it really hard, finished up seasons 8 and 9, watched the I Want to Believe movie, and then sat down for not my first time watching season 10, but my first time watching the last season. And season 10 I had watched once all the way through. Then I went in one time, well actually that's out of order. I watched it one time where I saw the first 4 episodes of the 6-episode season. I had access to a friend's Netflix account or Hulu or whatever it was airing on at the time, and then I was unable to finish watching it there. It took me getting the season on Blu-ray when it came out, or shortly after it came out, and then I watched all 6 episodes then, and then I just watched all 6 episodes basically for the second time, 4 episodes for the third time. Anyway, and then I got to watch season 11, excuse me, for the very first time. That was just in the last couple of days, wrapping up earlier this morning. So this is fresh, and hopefully I can talk about everything here without screwing anything up. But anyway, real quick, there's the event series, or season 10. Excuse me. It's hard for me to even refer to this as the 10th season because they called it the event series. It's right there on the front of this disc. But then this one came out and they just called it the 11th season. So I was like, all right, fine. We're going to call it season 10 and 11, and we'll go that way. So I want to jump right into the 10th season and go over these episodes. So the 10th season started with an episode called My Struggle, which, just to condense it down into a nutshell, was excuse me, was to see Mulder and Scully. At that point was 14 years after the series had ended. It was 8 years after the second movie, but the second movie, while it gave us a little glimpse at Mulder and Scully, a handful of years after things had went down, and then they get pulled into an FBI investigation, I feel like that was more of a look at them, the characters, as opposed to the mythology of the show. And everybody refers to it as like a Monster of the Week episode in feature length. It doesn't really dabble too much into the important parts of the overarching mythology. Or is it overarching mythology? One or the other. So then we pick up, like I said, like 8 years after the events of the movie, and we see that during the movie I got the impression, I never feel like I can definitively stamp anything onto an X-Files episode. I feel like I always have to sort of say, well, it looked like this thing was happening, but who knows for sure. So in the movie it looked like they were together still, but Mulder was obviously secluding himself while Scully had went back to work in the medical field. In this, it seemed like in the 10th season and in the My Struggle episode, it seemed like they had drifted even further apart. But things were going down that caused Mulder to kind of come back into the limelight. I don't remember the specific details. There's the Tad O'Malley internet show. He's like this crazy conservative type who totally believes in the aliens and stuff like that. I get the government conspiracy aspect of someone like that perhaps distrusting the government. But to go so far as to also believe, like, I think I understand and believe the alien part of it was surprising. It was like a weird juxtaposition within one character. But really just kind of introduced Mulder and Scully back into the world, getting entangled in this, meeting characters like Svetla. God, I can't remember now. There was a character who said that she had been a part of the experiments and had been impregnated and then had her babies taken away from her. And as always, since I can't remember the specific details, but as always, Mulder and Scully get roped back into things, and then Mulder turns around at some point and is like, I've been lied to, nothing is as it seems. That's a given on the show, except for, in my opinion, his belief in aliens. Like, he's always pretty fortified in his position that the conspiracy is real. And the only time I really felt like he fell off of that was that whole season 5, when he just didn't believe in anything. And watching back on that this time around, I was like, season 5 suffered drastically for having that drag on the whole entire season. I get it was like a build-up to the movie and all that, but that's a big old gamble to take to kind of turn on your audience. So to see Mulder kind of going that route again in an episode was a little disappointing. But because I don't remember every last thing that I would probably like to comment on it, I'll just jump on to the next episode, which is Founder's Mutation. All I really remember off of this one is a guy with a high-pitched noise that's going on in his brain, and he kills himself, and Mulder and Scully are investigating, and it starts to afflict Mulder, and it turns out to be another person and like a strange means by which that they were communicating. I don't recall, though, off the top of my head exactly what it was they were communicating in that, but I do remember it feeling like, okay, so we had a mythology episode, and that was good. I liked it. This was a Monster of the Week type episode, and it was decent. And then the third episode was Mulder and Scully Meet the Were-Monster, which was their first comedic episode. So we've got a 6-episode season that we're coming back to the series with, and we've already done all 3 of the major types of episodes that they've ever done. In my opinion, that's it. I don't go mythology, Monster of the Week. I go mythology, Monster of the Week, comedic episodes. The comedic episodes have been both Monster of the Week and mythology, at least alien related in terms of like a Jose Chung's From Outer Space, but I wouldn't ever consider them to be the same as the dramatic Monster of the Week and the dramatic mythology episodes. But that episode was actually really good. It was a well done comedic episode, in my opinion, and I enjoyed that. But I was sweating a little bit when I was watching through it the first time, when I saw the first 4 episodes, and then the first time I watched the whole entire 6 together. I was like, we're giving a lot of time to things that, in my opinion, aren't as important this time around, but I'm going into it believing that this is wrapping up the series. Like, we've come back to give resolution to the series. Personally, that's what I wanted. I wanted resolution. So I'm squirming a little bit as I'm watching it the first few times. But this time around, I was like, I know now what... I knew we were getting the next season. I knew I was going to see more. I already knew that things weren't exactly going to wrap up, but we were getting more, and I was happy for that. So I enjoyed it for what it was, which was a funny episode, and about like the opposite of someone getting bitten by a vampire or a werewolf and turning into something like that. It was a creature getting bit or infected by a human and then turning into a human randomly or whatever. It was really good stuff, and some nice nods to people who were involved in the show. Of course, Kim Manners, director of like 50 episodes of the original run, and then there was another person who was involved with Millennium. I don't watch that show, didn't know who it was, but it was a nice tip of the cap paying tribute to those who had passed away. So the next episode was Home Again, which I always thought when I heard that term, I was like, oh, it must be something to do with home. I feel like it has some home vibes, that original, I think, season 4 episode that was out there. I think it's a fine episode. I don't get why it was crazy, like people kind of turned against it, but it's not one of my favorite episodes either. Home Again, though, had a really interesting feel to it. It was the first one of the episodes on this that really truly felt to me like that could have been in the original series, and it would have fit well in between, like say seasons 4 and 7. Just about some crazy dump truck and a monster guy that drives around and kills people in the name of protecting the homeless in, I believe, Philadelphia. But I liked the episode. It was probably at this point tied with the Weremonster episode before, as in terms of the quality of just sitting down and enjoying it. Then they moved on to an episode called Babylon, and I'm feeling bad right now because I can't even remember what Babylon is about. So I'm going to break my rule here of looking stuff up. I wasn't going to look anything up. I was going to try to go off the top of my head, but I just cannot. So, Babylon episode, season 10, episode 5. I'm just going to look at real quick. Oh, yeah, it was about the young Muslim man bombing. It was all about suicide bombers, and we got to, we first got a couple extra characters, Agent Einstein and Agent Miller. So the episode itself, the content about the Muslim bombers and all that kind of stuff, I think it was one of those weird allegorical type things where they were talking about people and the way they were treating foreigners in our country in the last 20 years, and especially in the late 20-teens, when the political climate got really crazy there for a while. It's still bad, but it definitely peaked during a certain president's run. But I think they were kind of using that as a way to show that people are still... I think it has to do with the way that aliens have kind of depicted on the X-Files a lot of things that are actually going on between human beings. And this was an episode that was willing to say, no, look, there's still a lot of shit going on between people in our world. And that's on both sides. I'm not being a patriot, American, yada, yada, yada kind of thing. It comes from all sides. You have to see everybody's point of view. The X-Files usually kind of does that through an alien creature or a Sasquatch or a lake monster or a ghost or a spirit or something. And I just think the one little thing I remember now that I looked at that was looking into human relations in regards to all that. I don't know. I'm not a smart man, but I do think I pick up some vibes like that from that episode. But the other half of it was mentioning Miller and Einstein. I do think they were trying to, with the second to the last episode in this season, and at that time not knowing if they were going to come back, I think they were trying to groom a new pairing of a guy who believes and a lady who did not, and they're partners and they're together, and he even kind of looks like Mulder, she even kind of looks like Scully with red hair. There were a lot of ways they were trying to, I think, break us in on maybe a new show or them taking over in continued X-Files. Obviously, that didn't really work out. And then they come back with My Struggle 2, which showed oh my gosh, it was, having not seen that final episode of season 10 until the last couple of weeks in the middle of this pandemic, I was like, could you imagine after the Lone Gunman episode predicting a terrorist attack by flying a plane into the World Trade Centers, and then that actually happened, And then you got an episode of The X-Files that basically was showing like a virus, a pandemic sweeping the nation, although this was in regards to the alien invasion kind of thing, breaking down everybody's immune system. This is like, I guess, how they were going to wipe out the majority of the people of the planet, only leaving the ones who were going to serve the aliens in whatever regards that they were going to. But it was really dramatic. I really liked it. And it ended on a big, massive cliffhanger. I can't imagine if I had watched that in 2016 and then there was no confirmation that we were coming back for another season. I would have been even more pissed off than I have been in general at no resolution to major things that the X-Files have put out there. But no, instead, it turns out to be, spoilers if you haven't seen it, hopefully you're not watching this and not realizing that I may be spoiling stuff. But yeah, it was all basically like a vision. It was Scully seeing the dreams and nightmares of her son William, who's seeing these things like visions, and she's able to see and feel it because of their, biological relationship. But it left us just a UFO over a bridge. Scully's there. She's okay because of the experiments that were done on her, the fact that she has the alien DNA in her. But she's trying to figure out where her son is, and she's trying to get help for everybody and create a vaccine against this thing that's going to kill everybody. It ends. And then we jump to, and that episode was called My Struggle 2. That is the common mythology episode name for the last 2 seasons. I wish they would have done something more creative than that, but excuse me once more. So season 11, which aired in 2018, I hate that I waited 3 years to watch this stuff. But My Struggle 3 is the episode that opens that up, and we discover that it was Scully seeing these things, as I said before, because of her son, William, seeing this stuff, and their connection that they were having. So it's not actually the end of the world. It's not actually a pandemic that was going on, a virus or whatever that was decimating the population, immune systems, and just killing people left and right, or it was preparing to. It was just a vision of a potential future. Could they change this? So, well, I've already decided I'm going to have to go back online here to look at episode synopses for these episodes, because I'm almost immediately lost, and I want to cover this stuff as best that I can. We see Jeffrey Spender. We saw both the Smokey Man and Jeffrey Spender come back, and as opposed to the last time they were on the show with their disfigured faces and bodies and burnt and nasty, I think that's how CSM showed up in the 10th season. In the 11th, they're better looking. They've been better healed, but they still have scars and whatnot. Some new people were brought in, including Barbara Hershey played a role in this, famous actress. And we saw a little bit of William, or someone that we presume to be William, in My Struggle 3. Oh, and I don't know how it was that I forgot to mention this, because it was my least favorite part of the first season. Oh yeah, it's during that episode Babylon. There's a moment when Mulder, it seemed like he got some sort of a drug trip, but he may not have even been in the drug trip. They made it out to believe that he was given like a placebo thing. But in an episode that was relatively serious, they turn into some fucked up country line dancing fever dream, and it's where they bring in the lone gunman in like a part of this fever dream. They don't have any lines or anything. They're just sitting there in cowboy getup while Mulder is dancing, is one of my least favorite things in the entirety of the series. And I actually really enjoyed season 10 and 11, but this was a big time downer. That's probably why I forgot about it, because I've been trying to block it out. But I was like, I have to bring that up when I'm covering this. And speaking of this, that's the next episode. This was the second episode of season 11, and this is one where they brought back one of the gunmen in a weird thing where Langley is like in some sort of a simulation, like his mind, his personality, his whatever was transferred into some sort of a simulation. It was something that he had worked out. If he were to die, he'd want to live on there, and he ends up contacting Mulder after all these years and cues him into some things that are going on, and basically says, you need to take this down because this is not real. It doesn't feel right. I'm in here with a bunch of other great minds like Joey Ramone, and that's like a personal hero of Langley's. I wish I could see it. I don't think it's on this Wikipedia article about it, but he mentions being in there with several other people. But he says he wants to be out of there because he knows, even as an AI copy of himself, he knows that it's not real and it's not right. It was nice in that regard to actually have one of the gunmen come back and be involved in it. Although I believe I read that there's a comic or something that retcons, or maybe it's not even retconning, but it says that they faked their death in that one episode, Jump the Shark, and they really weren't dead. I would have loved it if something like that had happened. They could have done that. I wouldn't have had any problem with that. But so be it. Third episode is called Plus One. This is where a guy sees himself in a crowd. He drives off, but this other version of him causes him to die or kill himself or whatever. It looks like people are killing themselves, but it's another thing going on. And this episode had a lady, and I didn't know until today that the lady who played a character in this by the name of Judy, she also played Judy's brother, Chucky, and played good and evil versions of both of those characters, but she was also the mom from the Home episode that I mentioned before. I didn't even see that in her, because the makeup and prosthetics from the Home, it would have been really hard to tell who this lady was. It was actually a really interesting episode that I enjoyed. It included some Mulder seeing an additional version of himself. But overall, it was just sort of a standard Monster of the Week style episode. So next we move on to The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat. I've heard about this episode so much that it was one of these comedy ones. It's written and directed by Darren Morgan, who did a lot of the comedy episodes in the original run. And it just was funny as hell. It's one of my favorite episodes from this the revival seasons 10 and 11. And I'd heard a lot of people talking about Reggie, and I thought it was a Reggie character from the original series, and they even spliced in who this Reggie guy actually is in this episode into some old footage, and they take a scene from that episode where Mulder talks to said Reggie, but then they show that it's this guy on the other side of it. But this one was just crazy, over-the-top comedy. That's just what the comedic episodes usually are, especially when they're Darren Morgan's. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I'm running against the stupid battery on the camera right now. So the next episode was Ghoulie, which actually turned out to be a mid-season mythology episode. And this is where we really got to see William, or as he was known as Jackson Vandekamp. That was his adopted name. But we discover, that this is William. This is the son. This is the guy who's supposed to be the key to the stopping the alien invasion. And Mulder and Scully go to try to find him. They kind of get roped into it as a case. But I think no, it was during the investigation of the case that they heard the Vandekamp name, and they both were like, is this who we think it is? But he he has amazing powers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that during the last episode. But he was causing people to be able to see things, creatures and monsters. And the creature, the Ghoulie creature, I saw that during the menu loop on the Blu-ray, and it kind of freaked me out. I didn't want to watch it during the night. I was like, I'm going to wait until a day when I can sit down and watch this and stomach it a little better instead of being alone in my house thinking about that. So I ended up really enjoying it. He had the ability to make people see other things, so he was even interacting with his own mom, and he thought that this might be his biological mother, but he didn't really know, I think, until events of the episode go by. But he gets away from them, and they kind of had to let him go. The next episode, 6, was an episode called Kitten. This was a Walter Skinner episode. Took us back to the Vietnam War, and a little bit of a glimpse at something that he told Mulder about in, I think, the first season. And it had Haley Joel Osment in it, which was just kind of messing with my brain the whole time I was watching it, because I just saw the kid from The Sixth Sense. But it was a good episode. It was really interesting. I don't think there was really anything major that I want to remember from it. But it was awesome to see Skinner get a little bit more of a highlight. I did not know that Mitch Pileggi was like 69 years old at this point right now. He would have been a couple years younger when they filmed this, but he looks good for his age. Almost everybody in this return to the X-Files looks pretty good for their age. Everybody looks older. I'm not saying that they look young, but some of them looking pretty damn good. And then the next episode is RM9SBG93ZXJZ. This is a weird title, a weird episode, and I loved it. It was so interesting, so minimalistic. It reminded me, this was a point I wanted to make, it reminded me in the 90s there were two movies that I still love to this day that were very paranoid about technology and the future of future use of technology, and that was Sandra Bullock's The Net and Gene Hackman's, not Gene Hackman, I can't remember, Enemy of the State, Will Smith. I have to look it up. Why can't I remember his name? It is Gene Hackman. Okay, I was thinking Gene Hackman was somebody else. But that was in 1998. The Net was in like 93 or 94. Both of those movies informed me a whole lot about technology and internet and espionage and surveillance. But they also taught me, even back then, that people were fucking crazy about worrying about technology and all that kind of stuff. But the movies are really interesting. And this episode was very much that for the X-Files. Very minimal, not a lot of dialogue, although more dialogue than I was expecting. But lots of drones and computers and AIs and security systems and self-driving cars kind of rebelling against our agents because they had a bad experience in an automated restaurant and didn't leave a tip, and had a Zumba robot vacuum that turned on Scully. And I don't want to say anything more because it just really deserves to be watched, but it was very, very interesting and I liked it. Next episode was Familiar, and this one was the one... Oh, this is the one that had Mr. Chuckleteeth. I'd seen this picture of this face, this kind of creepypasta face, that for some reason I had thought was in the previous episode, but it was in this one, and this is more of a witchcraft episode where the Chuckleteeth thing kind of came to life, I guess, and was killing people because of messing with witchcraft in a town in Connecticut. In my opinion, it was a good episode. It wasn't as good as a few of the others that I've talked about so far, but Mr. Chuckleteeth definitely had to be mentioned. All right, so the second to the last episode is called Nothing Lasts Forever. What a prophetic title, possibly, because we don't know for sure if they're coming back. After this season wrapped, Jillian went on record as saying she didn't have any interest in coming back to the X-Files, which was such a shame because of the events in the last episode. But looking back on this, Nothing Lasts Forever, looking back on some lines in previous episodes, there was obviously a lot of people just saying, hey, the X-Files was what it was. Maybe just kind of remember that. Do we really need a whole lot more? I feel like that's kind of some of the comments that were being made. In the context of this episode, though, this was some actors from years back prolonging their lives through some sort of a weird blood cult. And it was an interesting episode. It was kind of strange. There were a couple of characters that were really interesting. Carlina Britch played a character. She came off as like some sort of weird revenge-seeking religious ninja. But I don't know. In the end, it was just an episode. Interesting ideas. It definitely would have fit in the earlier run of the show. It was also kind of disgusting because there was a lot of blood and body part type stuff. But yeah, that leads us to the last episode, My Struggle 4, the last episode that we may ever get. And basically this was just more mythology. William's on the run. Government agents know who he is, where he is, what he is. They're trying to track him down. Obviously, Mulder and Scully are all trying to find him as well. They go out looking for him. This is where Scully lets Tad O'Malley know about what's supposed to be coming, what's supposed to be happening with the pandemic. The man-made pathogen developed from an alien virus. And this is when Tad O'Malley kind of talks about it. We get more interactions between Mulder and William, Scully and William. I was taken aback by the violence and the graphic nature that they went into with this one. William has the ability to basically make a human's head or entire body just explode. And in one sequence, he does that against 3 or 4 people. That was just like, oh. Like, I know we have the technology with CG to just make some really graphic stuff. But I didn't think a show on Fox would just do that so much. And also kill at least one somewhat relatively important character in that means. A lot of characters die in this episode. So once again, here's the spoiler warning. But in the episode, the Barbara Hershey character dies, Monica Reyes dies, Cigarette Smoking Man dies. We thought Mulder died, but it turned out to be William looking like Mulder to the Cigarette Smoking Man. And then at the very end of the show, we see William pop up out of the water because he was shot like a war for a pier, fell into the water. You see him pop up, and he's okay. His abilities and powers are that epic. But we don't know if Smoky Man survives yet another attempt on his life. I saw something in the special features that suggested that maybe Monica Reyes isn't really dead. She told them that she wanted the bullet to go right here in the third eye area to be like a symbolic death for her character. And they ended up having it off to the side or whatever. And somebody posited that maybe that was a sign that she wasn't really actually gone. I don't know. It is a show where lots of people get shot and then killed and then come back. My one disappointment was not ever seeing Krychek come back in some way, shape, or form. Like no vision, no flashbacks, nothing like that. I saw some people online complaining about the Smoky Man still being the main villain and all of it. I don't care. I like the character. I don't like some of the things that they decided to choose that he was supposedly responsible for. The question as to whether or not William is Mulder's biological son or Smoky Man's biological son, or in more behind-the-scenes stuff, there was a suggestion at one point that they were going to make him joint son. They were both going to be biologically his father in some convoluted way, I'm sure. But in the end, they left it as just that it was actually the Cigarette Smoking Man, but that Scully was pregnant despite, being older in age. And in the scheme of the show, I guess she was probably supposed to be like in her late 40s at that time. That's not impossible for people of that age to have a kid, but I think her character's plight over the series has been that she shouldn't have been able to have a kid, and yet she was telling Mulder that she was pregnant. Maybe that was part of the reason. I thought to myself immediately, maybe that's why she doesn't want to come back. Because she wouldn't want to come back and have to be like, now I'm a mom and an FBI agent and on the run from a conspiracy and trying to find my son and the aliens and the government. But overall, I really, really loved these 2 seasons. I had gone into this knowing that a lot of people had said they didn't get the closure that they wanted, and I was kind of upset. I wanted closure. I wanted resolution. The aliens invade, or we stop them. Something along those lines. Let's have some sort of a wrap up. I'd love to see the aliens invade and a lot of people die, and maybe the world of the X-Files becomes like some post-apocalyptic wasteland. But there are people that survived, including William, and now he's the new, like John Connor kind of thing, like leading those who are left against those who we are fighting. Maybe that's too Terminator for them to go that way, but you've built William up to this point, and you've also built this invasion up that you now had to sort of retcon and explain that, well, the countdown began in 2012 because the cigarette smoking man changed the timetable. So get us somewhere. Get us there. I don't think I want to see X-Files with Einstein and Miller as the lead agents. I don't think I want to see an X-Files where anybody else other than at least Mulder is a part of it. Or a movie. Or a movie. But whatever you do, if it's one more season of 6 to 10, or if it's one additional and final movie, do resolution, call it a day. Everybody's getting older. Everybody sounds weird. Mulder, especially in the 10th season, sound really gravelly and stuff. And I know most of these people are all smokers, and they have been at some point in their life or all their lives, so they sound that way. They're older. That just happens when you're getting older. Scully sounded not necessarily like her voice was different, but in some episodes it sounded like she was whispering and she didn't have much oomph, and then she'd be right back to sounding like she normally would, and then she'd go right back to this subdued voice, and I was like, there's nothing that's been explained in this like, they're not saying, oh, well, she had this problem or that problem. It was just like her personal real life issues with her voice were coming through, and it was strange that it kept going back and forth. Even Chris Carter in the special features sounded different. Sounded like he was sick with something. So I say we just wrap it up. We don't try to spin it off or push forward some sort of X-Files, the new generation. Like, we don't need something like that. We just need resolution. It's the only thing now that I have a complaint about. As I was saying before, I kept hearing so much about people like, I hate these new seasons. They should throw them out. We didn't get any kind of closure or resolution to things. It was pointless, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I was starting to get programmed with that. Like, I'm going to hate this, aren't I? And then I've watched all of all 6 episodes of season 10 and the 10 episodes of season 11. And the only part that I was down on was that stupid line dancing segment of Babylon. Everything else on it was awesome. They hit so many of the right notes, so many of the right marks. They brought back maybe a little bit more mythology stuff would have been great. Maybe just a little bit more of an acknowledgement of stuff like the super soldiers and the aliens in any way. But more of addressing William and the invasion in the future would have been nice as well. But the Monster of the Week episodes were all pretty good. Several of them felt like they would have slotted right into the original 9 seasons immaculately. Comedy episodes hit all the right marks. Plenty of tongue-in-cheek gags and self-referential stuff. And Darren Morgan talked about nostalgia, and in his episode had a lot of nods to like 50s sci-fi type stuff, but there were lots of nods towards previous X-Files stuff. The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat with Reggie was all the scenes where they spliced him into the original run reminded me of like Forrest Gump when Gump was in historical video and whatnot. Like, My opinion that I had formed off of no basis has elevated immensely on seasons 10 and 11. I love them, and my only problem, other than the stupid dancing segment in Babylon, is that we just didn't get closure, we didn't get resolution, we didn't get to see the bigger picture. There was a part, a line, a quote or something in the special features that I was watching where someone said, it's always better to leave with more questions than just dropping answers on everybody. And I agree with that to a point, but when you have a show that left on a cliffhanger, that got a movie that addressed nothing, and you come back almost 20 years later and you have the opportunity to do more than just, let's sell another season of this show, let's get more advertising and more dollars. And when you have the chance to resolve some things and answer some questions and be one of the first shows of that nature to do that, I think you have to do that. You have a responsibility to do something along those lines. I'm a guy who, call me stupid or crazy, but I enjoyed the finale of Lost. Even though there were tons of questions that were still left, it at least felt, for me, it felt happy. It felt sentimental. And so far, The X-Files hasn't really done that. So that's just what I want to see if we do come back. Give us a movie, convince Jillian to come back and do one last little thing, and as long as you're just going to finish it and not leave all of us waiting and wondering. Convince her that you're going to culminate, and whether it's through one final short season or a final epic movie, and then come back. If you decide that you want to try to roll with this show longer, then I say Mulder by himself, or Mulder with a new partner, but let it be somebody that makes sense. Bring back Robert Patrick. Let Doggett, because Doggett didn't get anything in any of this. Reyes got to come back for a few episodes. But by the way, to that point, had no problem whatsoever that she was kind of working with the cigarette smoking man, because it felt like she wasn't really doing it because she wanted to, but she had to. And of course, like I said, she died, but or died, because nobody ever really dies on the X-Files, as they say. But if you're going to partner Mulder with somebody, make it be somebody that makes some sense. It could be someone crazy. It could be an old partner, one of the people we saw over the course of the series. Maybe they get the British lady that a lot of people tend to not like, but I thought she was fine. Was it Phoebe? Or just somebody else. Or, like I said, have Mulder go on his own. Or have it be Mulder and William. Or maybe Mulder pursuing William over the course of a final season. What if Mulder, for whatever reason or another, kind of became a private investigator on his own instead of under the guise of the FBI, and he's trying to track his son down, but as he goes along, he kind of like gets hired by people to investigate things. That might be kind of fun. And then he tries to find William along the way. Or they're together, and they're kind of a duo themselves. Who knows? Just something. Resolution. Closure. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on seasons 10 and 11. Absolutely love them. Don't see why people are down on them as a thing, aside from my problem. Anybody who just thought that those were poor episodes or whatever, I just can't agree. So, all right, guys, that's it for this episode. I beat the camera battery, and so I'm going to be able to get out of here with this episode without having to break it down or edit it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.